Did you say you would have actually, she's been totally fine with that, yeah. Nothing phases her. That would make things better. Oh, that was it. Now, really? I love hiking.
Doug?
How are you? Good, how are you today, buddy? Heard we got another complaint came in.
Yeah,
Ryan, Hunter.
really?
Somebody on his team.
Oh, I see that.
That's what he was telling me. See, I told you. I told you Billy was here. No, Deuce up there.
Yeah, Billy. Hey, don't eat me.
Okay.
Originally, how are you? We pulled off more real. Harry.
John Scherer, how are you?
Yeah, no, that's.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't understand how people.
That'll be one.
75 minutes.
That was. Harris hurt.
I know, I don't even hang out with them. Good morning, how are you?
Good.
You're in town?
I'm in town.
Hi. Nice to morning, good morning, how are you? I have some liquor in my office. I'm gonna have Riley hang out with me. So I think we've got your, that's. He just messaged me and said they're there. Scott, I think you can schedule Joe anytime.
Okay.
And he's got me.
You know what? We.
All I found.
That's all.
That was what was available.
Billy.
So then.
That was.
I didn't know if you were gonna be here today. Good for you.
Well, have you been there?
I am.
You care.
I've been here.
Should be able to sign up.
Actually use them.
Well, they're catching.
Yeah. My brother's still in town, my other.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Then you can write an offer right away.
Yeah, I'll have to win it the last. Usually Lake Atlantic. Are they trying to do that? And I mean, I think you like. Find a normal. She couldn't find it. Nobody like a house. Forget out all the. No. You know what family is? You had a dog. I know with my dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Huge candidate. It was, and it was. About it and everything. I am not. I'm not. Yeah. Wonderful.
How are you? Yeah.
I say.
Okay. Compared to staff. Everything. Huh? It must have been some unreleased.
One, two, three. Test 1, 2, 3. All right. Make sure that Nico's on his way. Nico's here. Woo, we can start. Good morning. I just want to make sure you guys are up and ready. We're gonna have a little fun today. Who watches Jimmy Fallon? Who's seen him do his thank you notes? We're gonna play a little version of that, and then we're gonna kick off this meeting with some thank you notes. Now, if you're offended by people being roasted, you may want to leave the room right now. Scott, you will be in the next round. Do not worry. Today, you're safe. All right, let's roll. Can we hit the lights here, Doug?
I know, but anyway, you guys mind if I read some weekly thank you notes? You guys are the best. We didn't take the kids over and you can please. That's sad. I think someone stole her tie. I was thinking. Someone's not said it's not with the tie. So he's starting his fire. He wanted his button all the way up to.
I'll get
Like a Wonder Woman tie, like a beautiful tie. Thank you, summer barbecues. Being a great way to invite friends over for a fun afternoon of not knowing when to ask people to leave. And probably have to hamburger. Why are you there? You don't have to break the street. You don't play down after 10 hot dogs. You're like, you're done. Thank you, people who say wine course. Basically saying, hey, look, I'm a hoarder and an alcoholic.
Or for it to turn up, you have to mute your mic, because otherwise it's gonna scream.
Yeah.
Are we ready? I need my rider to come up and stand as my sidekick.
Really?
Professional rider, straight from Florida.
Oh.
I didn't even have to say who it was. He immediately knew. All right.
You want me up there?
I mean, can we get the lights back there? The last 4 days, if you call Brian and he's not been available, he's been very busy. He's been very, very busy. Mark,
Yes.
oh, you want me to turn this back on? Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go. My professional writer, Mr. Brian Thomas, is here to help me. Are we ready? Is this Shahoon in the house? Let's start it off. Today's thank you notes. Oh shit, I need my fucking pen. Dementia. Okay. Thank you, Mark Shahan, for not peeing in my pool like you did in Punta Cana. Yeah, right. Never mind. We go to Punta Cana. I'm drinking beers with the guy for 3, 4 hours. I get out to go pee 4 or 5 times. I says, Mark, don't you need to go pee? He's like, I peed right here. I'm like, thank you for peeing on me, Mark. And he thought this was okay. Thank you, Donald Trump, for your latest loophole, legal loophole. What's the point of having money if you can't bribe someone? Chris Beaton, would he do that? Thank you.
Gotta do it again, it didn't work.
Thank you, Joe, Hunter, and James Biden for validating Donald Trump's latest defense. Bribery works. I said you got to be equal. You got to burn both people, right? Right? Both people, both people. All right, now we're done with the politics. I don't like either one. I'm Brian Thomas. Okay. Whoa, whoa. Thank you, tech guys, for making me and Brian look so stupid. Aaron said, in their defense, it's not very hard to make you look stupid.
Nice to her.
Thank you, Brian Thomas, for making everyone feel so good and normal about themselves after seeing your girlfriends, Lola and Marlena, taxidermied in your office. I always say, be the unique person you are, but wow.
I thought we heard you have fun.
Thank you, Home Services of America, for buying my company and letting me be in charge and run it exactly as I want. Like you said, no bureaucracy. Right. I love bureaucracy. Thank you, Jay Brown, for being there for all of our agents, making sure all of our agents have the knowledge and success and access to technology. Could you please just recruit one agent?
Yeah.
Brian's like, I like some of these people. I don't know if we can do this. I'm like, we can do this. Thank you, Kevin Baumeister, for donating truck parts and catalytic converters to those in need. So kind of you. Thank you, Heather, for being such a hard ass. And it's the hard ass you are, and never shedding a tear. Just like when I said, do the dream boards, and I said 30% of the people will cry, And Heather's like, why would anybody ever cry? And then we did a dream board and Heather's like, the number's now 35%. Thank you for the makers of shoe lifts. So Troy and Megan can look so much taller. That's just mean.
I didn't put make.
That's Troy.
Thank you, Scott, for showing us how to lose weight by cutting out food and sticking to alcohol instead of food. I said, no, Brian, it's Ozempic. Thank you, Nico, for letting us know that eating ice creams made your boobs bigger. What's the story behind that?
Somebody asked him, do you like ice cream? And what did Troy, or what did Nico say? Do I like ice cream? Look at my boob.
Thank you, Pam Rasmussen, for letting your pet dogs run through the office and not your pet horses. We so appreciate the little poop, not the big poop.
That's good.
Little shit. Thank you, Julie Tartaglia, for opening up our newest office, the West End, where all of our agents hang out, drink, and thank you for not charging me for the space. You're the best. Do you charge Chris Beaton? Thank you, Jay Lisi, for giving up drugs and alcohol 17 years ago. You made our company so much more profitable. I had time to work versus chasing Jay down at bars. Come on, let's go. 9:45 in the morning. Can you come and get your brother? I'll be right there. Thank you, Carrie Miller, for keeping track of my schedule. And especially thank you for being here when I'm here, because I'm never gone. Thank you for the makers of peroxide, so that Shannon, my beautiful wife, can be a natural blonde. I told Brian, you are a natural blonde, honey. I don't know why he would write that. From the gang here in the office, thank you, Vince Lisi, for letting us get through 3 meetings in a row this past year without showing a video that makes us cry. Crying is good, Brian. And finally, thank you, Mamie Jackson, Todd and Tasha Moss, Megan Owens, Jay Lisi, Fred Tischauer, Josh Bundren, Ashley Some or Some or Some name change. And all of you that have donated your time, efforts, and money to make the Sunshine Kids event successful each year in and year out. I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for caring. I know we recorded this, but I don't think we should send this to Home Services of America. Or I may not have a job tomorrow. All right, all right. Where's my agenda at? Thank you. All right, Bill, Doug, thank you, agenda, for showing up. I hope you guys had a little fun with that. Our RPAC people, Bill and Doug, are going to give us a quick 15-minute spill. I had to humor you before I did this to you.
This can't be humorous.
You know, when you leave a concert and the opening act was so much better than the headliner? Thank you, Vince. All right, where's our, here we go. Many of you have seen this before. Thank you for letting us do our annual RPAC update of what's going on in the world of government and why we need our help collectively. But for those of you that want an update, last year we had a goal of 172 We raised 174 with the help of many of you in this room, and we're going to ask you again for help by the end of the day. Some leadership, you'll recognize a lot of these faces. We've got, of course, our Crystals, our OABR president, Denise Poppin, upcoming president, Joe Gerkes, chair of the state RPAC, Doug, of course, the state president, Perry Nealon in the room, if we have any questions, and myself, RPAC trustee. What does RPAC stand for? Realtor Political Action Committee. We are not a group of people that rally around any particular party. We don't support Republicans or Democrats just because of the party. We basically support anybody that supports the housing industry. And we're at our last city council election, I think we supported 3 of each party and 1 independent. And that's about as even as you can get. We call ourselves the Realtor Party. We're very involved locally, at the state, and also federally, as you'll see some of the things that we're involved in right now. Here's some recent accomplishments. Taxing services that got realtors exempt. There was a tax on services that would have had our commission lumped into that. We lobbied to get us removed. There's a lot of other places or other occupations that that were not as lucky. If you guys remember, back when COVID, if the rule would have came down to have essential workers only, we were included in that essential workers plan based on all of our relationships with the mayor and the mayor's office and so forth. Other states actually shut down their MLSs. You couldn't even log in if you're a realtor for 2 or 3 or 4 months. Okay. Wholesale bill, we've talked about that. That's something that that Doug could expand on if you want to say a word. Landlord tenants. When the Landlord Tenant Act came out, there were inspections every single year. Through our efforts, we got that down to 1 inspection every 10 years, as long as you're passing the inspection. Online notary, that was very important on our day-to-day operations. Ongoing federal concerns, WOTUS, Waters of the US. Doug, you want to say a word about that?
Let's see if I can. Nope. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So the Waters of the US is what that is that's a big thing that we're worried about right now at the national level. And what Waters of the US is, it's in the Clean Air Act is where it is. And what it does is it regulates all navigable waters. And to what extent that regulation goes into place depends on where you're at. It depends on what administration's in power. So it started out with Obama that was very restrictive. Well, Trump got in there. He made it less restrictive. Biden went in there. Now he's making it more restrictive. And so now we have the Senate and the House that we're working with. We obviously don't work with the president directly, but we work with the congressmen and senators and work with those folks about getting this done. So now we've got a compromise in place that we're trying to get the president to buy into, but we have a lot of realtor champions across the nation that are helping us with this. And this thing goes down to water in ditches, water in ponds, things like that, that they want to regulate from the federal government side. So those of you that are developers and want to put a pond or something in the middle of your subdivision, that could affect it depending on where this thing lies. So this is a really important thing that we're working on as well. And I'll just touch base on the next one, flood insurance. You've heard me talk about that. We've had classes in here on that before. Flood insurance, as of September 30th, it expires again. We have no long-term solution in place. We will have no flood insurance as of September 30th if we don't get a long-term solution or they kick the can down the road, which they've done for about 6-7 years now. I mean, this all started with the Biggert Waters Act back in 2012. And not to bore you with all that, but that's how long this has been going on, 11 years, that we've been trying to get something consistently in place, something permanent in place, because you'll see a lot of foreclosures come into place if there's not flood insurance available to these folks. So flood insurance is another big one.
If you guys remember a few years back when there was a gap when we were, I believe, in the state of Nebraska, 450 closings a day was being delayed. because we didn't have an arm for flood insurance. And then, of course, they're always attacking the ability to do 1031 exchanges. They keep hammering on this is the millionaire's loophole or the rich person's way out. It's not. It's the everyday investor that takes advantage of the 1031 exchanges, and we've proven to them time and time again that it's good for the economy and good for the taxes. So we're fighting that over and over. Currently, there were 812 bills introduced at the state level, and with 30 amendments. We supported 23, opposed 18, and we're kind of watching 25 of them, because politicians are sneaky. And they might, let's say, introduce a bill that says puppies are cute. Everybody's going to vote for that. But then all of a sudden at the last minute, they throw something on there that says, but let's charge this for that. So we have to watch a lot of them. Some things that we're supporting, a lot of affordable housing, workforce housing, and so forth. But some things that are very important, the consumption tax. That is to put a tax on everything new bought in the state of Nebraska. Eliminate the other taxes and only tax new things in Nebraska. That means a new house would have a tax on it anywhere from 11 to 14, 15%.
So
new cars also.
a little bit
Everything
more,
new.
a little bit more about that consumption tax. That thing's a big one. I went down and testified against this. This is going to be a bill initiative. They're trying to get signatures to get this on the ballot. And all they're telling you is we're going to get rid of your income taxes. They're not
property
telling
taxes.
you what's going to happen. So they're not telling you the other side of the story. Right now, Senator Erdman introduced this thing. It would be a 7.5% tax on all new items. Well, you go buy a load of lumber. If you use that for a house, or you go buy a load of lumber and you use that for a deck, they might tax you on those both. Then at the end, when that new construction is done, are they going to tax you again? Right now, the average sales price is $300,000 for existing construction. That would be a tax. The tax of 7.5%. Economists are saying that that's got to be a minimum of 14 to 18%, guys. So now you've got a new construction house of 300, not new construction. Well, yeah, new construction, those are 500, but 300,000, that's $42,000 to $54,000 more on top of that. Bill's going to talk in a minute about what percentages already go to bureaucracy of new construction. And so this stuff's important that we get out in front of it. And though if they potentially tax you on the lumber to build the house, then at the end of the rainbow, they tax you, that could be double taxation. So be careful when this thing comes out, and all it's going to say, do you want to get rid of taxes in the state of Nebraska? Well, of course, that makes sense. Where are you going to make this up? And to make this up, what they want to give you back, give us back, it's got to be a minimum of 14 to 18% on this taxation. And that's on everything new. And where does that lie?
So $1 million house is going to have $150,000 to $180,000 worth of taxes. Taxes on every new house, appraisers are not going to appraise the house high enough for the taxes to be rolled in. So it would be a mess in our industry. If we think our existing market is tough right now, it'd be an absolute mess. State electrical, they tried to pass a bill that would upgrade electrical standards. We're trying to keep costs down. They keep trying to raise it. They wanted to put a shutoff valve on the outside of every new house. A shutoff valve that your neighbor kid could come over and shut your power off, because they felt that it was a safety matter. In case there was a fire, the fireman could shut off the power to the house. That's just one. The other one, forced acceptance of government financing. There's a bill right now that would force your sellers to accept government financing. Because of you can't discriminate against how someone is getting their income or how someone is paying for their purchase. That we keep fighting. This is our third year of fighting that one to try to keep, your seller to decide what kind of financing they want to take. A couple other additional bill concerns. LB 16. They said that if someone is licensed in another state, they automatically could get a real estate license here in Nebraska. Well, the commission has a good arm for filtering out people that maybe don't deserve a license, but we were able to exempt our business from that. Our lobbyists were able to do that. LB 49 solar access right, voiding existing covenants. Let's say you buy a lot and you want to build your 2-story, your dream 2-story. If the person next to you has a solar panel, you can't build your house. So that's
You can't
something that-
impede their solar.
Yeah,
usage.
you can't impede their, you can't put them in the shade.
And this would take the place of current covenants. That would kick those out of the way as well. As far as if you have covenants that say you can't have solar panels, this bill would say that you can't tell them that.
SIDs, there's some restrictive arms that are trying to make SIDs require that you put some Section 8 housing in developments. No matter what you have to pay to build it, you have to offer it at a certain price. And then tax on services, we talked about that. The average $300,000 transaction would increase your seller's cost by $1,280 on just that one. A couple things across the in 35. Oh, we studied just in Lincoln, Nebraska, every $1,000 additional cost of a house, 138 families are taken out of mortgage qualification. So when we're raising with all of these regulations, it's taking people completely out.
Speaking of regulations,
Speaking of regulations, welcomehomecoalition.com. If you haven't been there, go check that out. We're really, we've got some great people here in town that are trying to keep the costs down. Nationwide, 21% of the cost of a new house is tied up in government regulation. UNO did a study, 32% here in the Omaha area. That includes all kinds of things with it, like electrical standards increase, architectural design, the cost of delays, any number of different things causes that 32%. So we're working really hard to
yeah, that cost of
help that.
delays, that's the biggest ticket item there, is how long do you have to sit and wait until the inspector gets out there and inspects the electrical, inspects the plumbing, how much downtime is going on here. And so that's the number one, as far as the biggest thing that we're trying to work on through the Welcome Home Coalition. We do have some realtors on there. Joe Gerke's one of them that's on there from our very own company. There's others on there, and it's people all across the city that are working on this. So please go out and look at that Welcome Home Coalition. There's a lot of good information out there. They are on the forefront, met with the mayor's office several times, city council members, and so on and so forth. So we also meet with them on different things, but the Welcome Home Coalition is truly trying to work on this housing affordability issue.
Other things that we're working on to keep things short. Obviously, we have a home shortage, inflation, interest rates, trade shortage. Trying to get more people entering the trades, property taxes. This is interesting. We had a meeting in which we had a bunch of local politicians there. We went around and asked every one of them, what's the cost of a new construction right now in your community? They averaged $250,000. That's what they think it costs to build a house. It's no wonder we're beating our head against the wall to try to get them to work for us. Actually, the day that they asked we did it, and it was 466,000 that day, which is probably more right now. What we're looking for.
Hold on before you get to that, Bill. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here. Number one reason why we're here, we're talking about all this stuff that's going on here and this, that, and the other. But the reality is that we've got at the state unicameral, we have 49 state senators. 18 of those were brand new this year. We've got 14 of them that are going to be new starting in 2025, the election cycle in 2024. That means a total of 65% of the senators are going to have 2 years or less experience down there. We have to build relationships with these people. We have a couple of realtors out of the 49 that are in there. We'd like to get more, but we also have to educate the other realtors or the other non-realtors on what's important to us. There was 812 bills written this year. They have so much time to write a bill to get it introduced. There were 40 bills that were introduced that got a number, did not have one word in them. They wanted to get their bill introduced. They didn't have time to write the stuff they wanted to in there. So there were 40 bills that were amended from zero to add things into this. Then you, as Bill talked about, it's called a Christmas tree effect. You get all these amendments, you take these bills, add them to other bills. We have lobbyists that stay on top of this. We have a group of people that does this, including Perry. We also have others. We have to have lifelines to these senators. We have to talk to them as soon as possible. Let them know why we're concerned about these things. And so the reality is we've got 65% of the body that decides what goes on in Nebraska that's going to have 2 years or less experience. We want to make sure that real estate is a high priority, if not the most important priority.
Well said, Doug. So we are looking for investors. We are looking for you to invest at any level. We're offering a couple of incentives for today. If you pledge or invest today for $150 or more, we're giving away 4 Visa cards today. Vince is taking you to lunch at La Casa at a date. At a date. Yeah.
Is that a chicken
Thank you,
farm? What
Vince,
is
for
that?
taking us to lunch at La Casa. You get a free headshot this fall sometime at RPAC Headshot Day. And I know we've seen your pictures. A lot of us need it.
Take advantage of that.
Yeah. You get a ticket to our Soaring Wings event on the 27th. And a ticket to the Hall of Fame event on the 17th at the Happy Hollow Club. And then you'll also get a seat at the October CE Day. So look at all this stuff today for $150 or more. Now, we would love you to step your way up. We've got a lot of major investors at our company, more than any company in town. A major investor would be $1,000.
And it should be that way, by the way.
Yeah, it should be that way. So just fill this out, waive it. We'll pick it up. Myself, Doug, Perry, we'll grab it from you. Last year at this meeting, we raised $10,000. So we really are in a position, as you know, there are so many things that are important. That consumption tax would wreak havoc on our business. When things happen, don't sit around and say, boy, I guess I should have gave a couple $100. Actually give it. Vince is a major investor. He's been a major investor for many years. We're asking for your help today.
You're in the NAR Hall of Fame. He is in the
Hall of Fame, baby.
No. I'm staying away from that.
Dun dun dun.
If you guys have any questions, Bill and I will be around afterwards to speak to you. If you guys are tired of Bill and I being up here, please speak to us as well. We're more than happy to train you folks so you can do this next year. So
And-
please speak to us about that as well.
If you want to Venmo, come find us, and here's the QR code to Venmo. So, any questions before we?
Questions?
All right. Thank you.
Wait, Corey?
Corey.
Still, and talking about rezoning the flood zone and export of flood insurance more affordable for certain areas that really shouldn't be a flood zone. Is that?
That's all part of it. So this basically is yes, flood insurance, no flood insurance is up September 30th, which they've kicked it down the road. They'll continue to kick it down the road until they get a final long-term solution. What you're talking about is how that's going to work behind the scenes, what they're going to do to change the maps, what they're going to do to make, what they're trying to do is they're trying to privatize this flood insurance. It's government funded. Obviously, we've had a lot of disasters, so the government has no money, as we've just been hearing about on the national news. So we're trying to privatize, or not we're, but they're trying to privatize this somewhat. How that's going to look and how that's going to work, that's all included in there. So September 30th is just yes, flood insurance, no flood insurance.
All right. Thank you, guys. Mr. Scott, can I have you come up next? I want to talk about, we were talking a little bit about escalation clauses and a lawsuit that took place and maybe what we should and should not have. Did we get that verbiage to put up on the screen?
Yeah.
No. Did she have it? Can you get that to her? Is it, you have it? We'll send it in an email. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, nothing like coming up after a money raise. So yeah, it was a really interesting thing. It was a arbitration award, and it was the facts are relatively simple when you.
We had the buyer in the deal.
Yeah, we had a buyer in the deal. Buyer writes an offer Basically a base offer of $850,000 with a escalation clause up to $1.1 million. There's other offers that come in, but they don't hit that 850 number. And then there is an unlimited escalation clause that comes in from another broker in town. And the list agent, who is not with us, different company, used the unlimited escalation clause to raise our buyers' offer up to $1.1 million, basically. Part of that is they sign the escalation clause addendum, and then they come back and say, here's the price of the house, 1-1, sign this. And they sign it, and our agent goes, hey, we need to see the other offer. Where's the other offer? And they say, oh, we'll get it to you, we'll get it to you, we'll get it to you. And so they've signed everything at this point. We're still waiting to see that escalation clause or the other offer that was unlimited. Of course, at that time, our buyers didn't even know it was unlimited. And of course, in the unlimited escalation clause purchase agreement, it says that it's unlimited, but just like the language we have, you have to send it to us, and then we can determine whether we're going to accept it or not accept it. And the list agent never sent it over because they liked our buyer's offer better because it was all cash, right? Makes sense. And so our buyers figure out about this unlimited escalation clause in that language after they see it 2 days after everything happened. And they go, that's not a valid purchase agreement. You can't escalate us with an unlimited escalation clause, specifically when it has a language in there that says they can either accept it or walk it away. Basically, that's not real. So sellers end up suing our buyers for the difference. The seller goes off and ends up selling it for $850,000, of course. And so they're suing our buyers for that. Our buyers are suing them for basically allegations of fraud. And then the sellers are also suing their agent, saying, you led us down a bad path here. And what the arbitrator came back.
Thank you for not being one of you.
Yeah. And so the arbitrator comes back and agrees and say that unlimited escalation clause, it's not a real offer. It can't be used to escalate unless you give it to them. And if you think about it, it would never be a real offer, right? Because could never be used to escalate another offer. It could only be used to escalate the unlimited one, right? It works. It's a one-way street, so to speak. It doesn't work both ways. They said that's not a valid purchase agreement. Buyer, you're released. You can go away. And then the arbitrator goes, and list agent, you let them down a wrong path. You're giving back $51,000 in commission.
So all of the commission, including the buyer's agent's commission.
Right. Yeah. So they paid they ended up paying for it twice, at the end of the day. And so that's, it's just.
Which we're assuming the broker probably ended up eating the buyer's agent because they were advising them on this also, right?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Right. So, I mean, it honestly makes sense, because how can you use a contingent offer that's not real? The whole point of an unlimited escalation clause is to create, energy for them to come back to you and say, will you buy this? And you never did that.
So Scott, let's walk through a scenario that would have been okay. That was a large gap between 850 and $1.1 million. So let's maybe change it. Let's just say the offer came in at $1 million, had an escalation cap of $1.1 million, saying we'll beat any other offer by $5,000, right? So if that had been the case and there had been another offer for $1,050,000 and you gave proof of funds of that, then they would have been obligated to pay $1,050,000 plus the 5,000 cap, so $1,055,000.
Right.
That buyer in
You
that
have a
case,
real offer,
the
right?
buyer in that case would have been obligated for the terms that they agreed to do that. The second scenario, what the seller and the listing agent could have done is they could have countered back at any number above 850,000. Is we're not using the escalation clause, but we're countering you back with this closing date and a price of $1,050,000 or $1.1 million or whatever. And then if the buyer signs that, the buyer is now obligated to do that. There's no obligation at that point in time for the listing agent or seller to show you the proof of the other things, because you've said, listen, we're countering this offer, not subject to the escalation clause, and you're accepting these terms and conditions or you're not.
Right.
Correct?
Would you buy this house for that amount of money?
Yes.
Yeah. We're not comparing it to another offer. We're not using the escalation clause. We are just simply countering you back and say, will you buy this house for $115,000?
I tend to like the scenario of these escalation clauses to counter back, because it's not usually, when I'm talking to you, it's not usually just price. There's some terms and conditions you like of one offer better than the other one. You're like, okay, I like the price of this, but I like the closing date of this. I like, that they're not including, or the financing of this, or the appraisal gap of this, or so I like countering back. the offer you like best that has the most terms and saying, you know, based on this closing date, this financing, this appraisal gap, this on inspections, you know, we'll accept your offer. This is a counter, not using the escalation clause. Because then you're getting clarity to try to get what's important to your seller in that process. And then I don't think there's any confusion as to whether you have a valid contract or not, because you're specifically spelling out the terms and conditions that you're willing to accept.
Yeah, and even more to the point, and just the one I was talking about, the buyer, our buyer actually said, well, we'll buy it for our base 900,000. And they were so insistent on following on this escalation clause argument, the 1-1, that they ended up not getting even 900,000. They ended up getting $850,000, plus the agent gave up $51,000 in commission. To basically the arbitrator gotten back to the 900,000 they would have gotten if they properly advised their client.
Any questions? Yes. Repeat the question. Yes, buyer number one.
Yep.
There was no counter. Buyer number one had an escalation clause with a cap of 1.1 million. Buyer number two had an uncapped escalation clause that said, subject to us approving the number you come back to us at. If you come back to us at 900 or 950 or a million or 1,000,001, the buyer has the right to accept or not accept that. They never did that with that buyer. Thus, you can't use that as an escalation clause against the capped escalation clause.
Yeah, the caps.
Oh, a different hypothetical situation. Go ahead, Don. I apologize.
They countered that one to that one. And telling buyer number two to accept this counter, you're buying the house. Where does buyer number one stand?
They'd be out, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so repeat the question. So buyer number one comes in and has an escalation clause up to a cap. Buyer number two comes in and has another escalation clause, but not to the same cap, but they'd like the terms and conditions of buyer number two better. Yeah, the seller's not obligated. You offer me $1,000,001 and you offer me $1 million and you offer me $750,000. Seller is not obligated to take the highest offer. The seller can take whatever offer they want without breaking federal laws, subject to yours is cash, closing in 2 days, blah, blah, blah. So there's no obligation because someone gives a higher escalation clause or price
until
to
the seller
accept that
signs
offer.
it. It's, you know, until the seller signs it, that's not a contract.
Yeah,
these are just offers that are going around.
Right.
And
Is
that's
that-
what happened in this one.
Is that your question?
You know,
Okay. Any other questions? Yes. You want to
yeah,
repeat
the
the question?
last thing you wanted, that was the arbitrator keyed in on
Repeat the
that.
question for those in the back.
Into the, you know, the Ryan's question was, you know, if you do it in the way what we're talking about,
Counter.
where I just counter back and say, I'm going to sell it to you for 1-1, will you accept that? What you wouldn't want to do is sign the escalation clause, because then that brings you into the escalation argument, the requirement that you show another offer that, you know, that raises yours up to get to that point. And that was what the arbitrator keyed on, said, well, hey, had they not signed that escalation clause, we would have had a deal at 1-1, but they did sign the escalation clause, which required that list agent to show a valid offer that raised this one up to 1-1, and they couldn't ever do it.
Yes.
Joanne? Yeah, I think it's a good idea to reference this is not subject to the escalation clause.
Scott and I are always big fans of the more clarity you have, the less gray area there is, and then it's just crystal clear, right? Yes.
So as a buyer, or as the buyer's agent, our buyers sign the escalation clause and they come back to us, so the seller doesn't sign it.
Right.
Okay.
So repeat that question.
Right. So it basically, you know, I'm the buyer. I write my escalation clause. I send it over. And we're getting into the same mechanism, right? Which is how does the seller respond? Well, if the seller wants to play the escalation game, they sign the escalation game, and they better have an offer that allows them to properly escalate it. If the seller wants to be outside of the escalation game, then what they do is do not sign the escalation. They counter. And in fact, the best thing to do is to say, this is not subject to the escalation clause. our counter back to you is, $1.1 million. That's it. It's like either take it or leave it. That's it. We don't need to show you another offer. We don't have to show you other terms. All we're going to do is to say, would you buy it for 1.1? Ryan, you question?
Yeah, wouldn't it be beneficial for your buyers to, instead of having the addendum, put in paragraph in, the seller's counter offer, their own.
Right, yeah. And again, that comes back to the list agent you need to actually, amazingly enough, you actually have to read the contract. You got to see what they write in paragraph 10. You got to read
All the addendums.
all the addendums. You got to know what you're presenting to your seller, so your seller knows. And this is
That seller could have been in the pool getting peed on by Mark Shahan. I
Right.
mean, that creates unclarity. I guess one last one here.
On the other hand, that we recently, an agent on my team recently wrote an offer with an escalation clause. We came back and said, other offers, I'm just asking for highest and best. We had said, you know what, but kind of our escalation is pretty, pretty good, and she was rather argumentative.
the list agent came back and said, just give us highest and best.
Our highest and best, we said, this is our highest and best, including the escalation, so they don't like escalations, we said. Have nuggies, and we ended up getting it, but I feel like if we write an offer, then it should be presented as written. Is that-
Well, by law, all offers.
Yeah, that'd
The
be the
question is,
rule.
if you write an offer, should it be presented as written? And the answer is, by law, you have to present all offers as they're written in the terms and conditions of them. I would tell you many times, I will recommend to, if you got an offer, multiple offer situation, and you've got one person saying, I'll escalate up to 350 and one saying to 355. If someone else is saying, I'm going to pay a cash offer at 340 or whatever. But if you have 3 or 4 offers you think are good offers, there's many times I'll advise the list agent saying, go back and tell even the ones that have escalation clauses. Usually when there's an unlimited escalation clause, because sometimes you get 2 or 3 that have unlimited caps. Say, go back to the 2 or 3 that you think are the best offers and just say, listen, we don't want to use escalation clause. Give us the best terms and conditions. Now, a buyer would have the right to come back and say, our best term and condition is still, we'll go up to this cap, but I mean, the seller has the right to negotiate as they want, the buyer has the right to negotiate as they want. Both parties need to make sure they're expressing the terms and conditions of what the other party's contract says.
I had the exact same scenario. And they refused.
Congrats on the business, guys.
Yes. This is good news. This is good news. I'm
Love
glad
to
you guys
hear
are
it.
selling houses.
Go ahead.
So what should we do? to make sure
If
that-
anytime anybody refuses to present an offer,
Let us know. We'll call the bro.
yeah, call Brian or Heather.
Yeah. Heather or Brian. We'll put their
And-
numbers
and
up in a minute.
One of them will immediately call the other broker and say they must present this.
Twice about having-
Last question. No, just during dream boards.
I was the agent. And it sounded like the list agent did not want to, she goes, I don't want to do escalation clause.
Right.
So I don't think she actually presented it at all.
Got it.
Yeah, there's actually a rule in the MLS that you can request that they
All right.
provide proof that they presented it.
Don, and then this is truly our last question.
There's no
No.
Nebraska law that says that. There is an MLS rule that says that you have the right to request that you be there. But the seller also has the right to say that you don't, that they don't want you there.
So if the buyer requests to be there, the seller, the listing agent has to tell the seller the buyer's agent's requesting to be there. The seller can say
No.
no. But
You can
But you can
something in
ask,
writing saying
yes,
that
you
they
can ask for
presented.
in writing, rejecting the offer, something like that. So we are going to run out of time.
So at the end of the day, to tie it up, the seller wrote a nice thank you note to their agent for giving them back $51,000 in commission.
Scott, hold on, stay here. Heather, I'm assuming you don't want to come and talk about appraisal gaps, so I'll keep Scott up here. But appraisal gaps, we've been having lots of conversations in mastermind groups about appraisal gaps.
Unlimited appraisal gaps.
And so a couple of different things. So this is where, this is where we're gonna send some verbiage out, right? That all of you guys, make sure you're protecting your buyer if you represent the buyer, make sure you're protecting the seller if you represent the seller. So one of the conversations we had yesterday was there was an unlimited gap and the appraisal came in like $50,000 low, right? And then all of a sudden, the buyer's like, oh, I don't want to buy it. I never thought it would appraise that low. Well, you need to be putting, right? You don't know, because right now we're seeing a lot of appraisals come in low, just so you know. So we're having a lot of appraisal issues right now. We see this almost every spring and early summer market. So if my recommendation to you as a buyer's agent, Scott, tell me if you see it differently, is put verbiage in there saying, you know, that if a seller's coming back saying it needs to be an unlimited gap and you're offering $425,000, you got to go back and say, listen, if this ain't only appraises at 375, are you willing to accept this house and pay the difference of the $50,000 on your loan? If it comes in at 400, are you willing to accept it? If it comes in at 410, I would come in and say, I would counter back saying, as long as it, on the 425 offer, get the level of comfort my buyer has, as long as it appraises for at least $410,000, I'm willing to buy it. Anything less than that, the buyer has the right to walk from it. Some sort of verbiage to that extent.
Right. I looked at a NP Dodge addendum. It's, you know, very professional looking, and it would basically lock a seller, you know, or a buyer into buying a house if the gap was, in that case, $100,000. Even though they said, you know, it just locks the
An unlimited gap,
Yeah,
lock the
unlimited
buyers in to that no matter what.
get of a $50,000 gap, and that under that form you'd be required. And I've seen their seller version too, which would lock you in, you know, regardless.
So
of-
Scott, hang on one second. The opposite side of this on the seller, right? You don't want the seller to say, I'm willing, if it doesn't appraise out,
Right.
that's okay. You can buy it for, if it's 425 and appraised at 375. If it doesn't appraise out, that's fine. I'll sell it to you for the lower of the appraised price or the purchase price. And all of a sudden your seller's obligated to be selling this, because we saw that in a case where there's a $50,000
Right.
gap and a seller was obligated to sell for $50,000 less because the seller's like, oh, there's no way it cannot appraise out. So we're
You
gonna
always want a ceiling and a floor depending on which.
we're gonna send out verbiage to this in both cases of what to do to protect your seller if you represent the seller, what to do to protect your buyer if you represent the buyer. We got a bunch of hands up. Start, Scott. Let's get a speaker back here to all these guys if we could. Does that one work by your feet?
Basically, subject to the buyer and the lenders. Being comfortable with the appraised value. Because like you said, we're starting to see lower and lower values.
So you have language in there where basically you say something about, you know, this is subject to the buyer and buyer's lender being okay with this gap or something like that. Okay.
Well, so, but if you're saying the financing contingency would be a reason to get you out of it, the truth is it isn't. Because if you say 425 and it comes at 325, the lender's going to say, I'm going to give you,
Yeah, we don't care.
I might still give you an 80% loan to value on the purchase price or the appraised value. So I'm going to give you, Rich, I'm still going to give you a loan at 375. So that the financing contingency paragraph would not get you out of that. Now, a listing agent that has any brains is going to say, listen, if you're coming an unlimited appraisal gap, I want to make sure that you have your 10 or 20% down that you put in the contract, plus another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. The buyer would still be the sell, right? Depending on, but the buyer would still be obligated to cover that unlimited gap if that comes in lower. The financing contingency would not get you out of that, right, Scott?
Right. I agree.
Keep going. I think Sherry.
So is it inherent in our contract that the appraisal, if it doesn't appraise, that it's negotiable? Is
No.
it inherent in the contract?
Not
or do we
inherent.
need
Yeah.
to-
I
we
mean,
need to
unless
write
you have
in
that
section
language,
10?
you know, we've talked about this a lot, but you know, either put in the language that you're subject to appraisal, or you better have, and if you've got a loan, you better really have those terms there as to what is an acceptable loan for you that you write into that as a buyer. Or you could be in a position where you're going to end up buying that house regardless of whether it appraises or doesn't.
Right. And all the time, if someone pays cash, if they don't put subject to how I'm appraising at or above purchase price, they're buying it for anything. But even on the financing part of that, if they're putting 30, 40% down
Right.
and it comes in low and they don't have, they still got an issue because
Well,
they're making it subject just to the
Right,
financing.
you get into these higher end homes, generally it's going to be cash, or a lot of it's going to be cash, you know. down.
Anytime you're putting more than 20% down, you start running into problems if you don't have appraisal verbiage in the contract.
And of course, you know, if the lender's only writing a loan on $300,000 loan on a, you know, $1.5 million house, they're gonna approve it. They don't have any.
Right.
They don't have any appraisal concerns. So you
Right.
have to protect them in that case and write it in as what you really want.
Right, and I think some people have some really good verbiage for that, some standard verbiage. Is there a way we could do a clause so that we can drop some numbers into it?
Yeah, we have it.
We-
It's,
is it
yeah,
in there
it
already?
preprints in the form. Yeah, it's options that we have on our purchase agreement. So,
It's in
yeah,
Dotted.
add a clause.
Thank you,
Okay.
Scott, for being an on-staff attorney to write all of this wonderful verbiage for all of our wonderful agents.
And if it doesn't work out, someone else wrote it.
Don, did you have a question? Yes, yes. Thank you, Scott, for not
You-
taking liability.
You went into a little bit with the financing. I was wanting to find out now if the appraisal gap was enough that the buyer doesn't have that much cash to put down, does the financing paragraph supersede the appraisal gap?
I'd say that the appraisal gap would be the thing that controls, because that's the last thing signed. That's an addendum that's sent into it. And you're basically saying, I don't care if I get the finance, I'm gonna pay it on this gap. You know it, you're basically saying, I understand that there's a risk that this thing won't
I'm gonna
appraise.
take a step back. I said the listing agent should be making sure that the buyer has money. The buyer's agent better be making sure that the buyer has money also, or they're probably gonna be getting sued for being.
Well, everybody knows that at the agreed upon contract price, it's all going to work, but the gap is a big question mark and.
Right, so if they're gonna do a $20,000 gap, you better make sure they have their 10 or 20% down plus another $20,000.
Yeah, I want to see that money.
Okay, guys. We're out of time. So one, real quick. We didn't get to this today. The market, it's not their fault. It's not their fault at all. No. 2 months in a row, we did over 1,100 new pending transactions. Got to go back to June of last year before we did over 1,100 new pending transactions. So tracking last 4 months of last year, the market was down about 30% on new pendings. The first 3 months of this year, the market was down approximately 20% on new pendings. April, we were down 15.8% on new pendings versus the previous period for the same year, right? April of this year versus April of last year, first quarter of this year versus first quarter of last year, so forth. Our 1,100 plus transactions this month will be off 10% from our new pending transactions of May of last year. So we're trending down, but if remember, it was this time last year where interest rates had soared. We were probably at 6% June this time last year. And we really saw the market tremendously start slowing down. June was our last good month last year for new pending transactions. I continue to believe with us trending, if you drove through any neighborhood in the last 3 weeks on the weekend, what did you see? You saw car after car after car after car after car at grad parties. With me, with all of the kid activities going on and all the grad parties, for the last 2 months for us to do over 1,100 new pending transactions in the market that we're in today is a good sign for what's going to happen in the second half of the year. So I tend to believe, now the second half of last year was not good at all, but I tend to believe there's some stability in the market, there's business being done, and that the second half of this year will be better than the second half of last year. It's not going to be what we had, the second half of 20 or 21, because those were crazy years, but there's business being done. I think that's a good sign that we're doing 1,100 plus new pending transactions the last couple months. So you guys are doing business, as Scott said, and killing it. With that being said, right, the number of agents still has not went down. We're hoping this year the number of agents go down, right? We got a lot of agents doing 20% less business. You guys need to make sure that you're building the stronger relationships, staying connected with them, right? More clarity, more value than ever. And you're going to continue to get more than your share of business. So guys, with that, we've ran over time. Yes. Pledge cards. So what pledge cards, put them up here?
Bill and I will be around to collect the Perry.
Good guy. Let's get the good guy too. Let's just keep running late. Who's doing the good? Okay, I can't remember. And the barbecue, guys, the barbecue. Next, you do not want to miss. This was awesome. Make sure Deb Seisig shows up or Terry show up for in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks. At the next sales meeting, we'll be auctioning off the outdoor parking spots. Last time, because the number was 6,500 plus, we did auction off 5, but we're only promising 2 with the minimum number. So the outdoor spots, We will be reaching out to you guys based on the dollar number. We'll determine whether it's 2, 3, or 4, or 5. So show up. It's fun. It's fun just to see these Eagles get in charge and like, well, no, that's my spot. No, that's my spot. Good. Show me the money. All right. Good guy.
This agent has been fantastic with me with collaboration and also helped me out with my follow-up procedures. I love hearing her personal story on how she's overcome some difficulties, and she's been a fantastic leader for my wife on showing what a powerful but yet very sweet and soft lady can be. So the good guy award goes to Rachel Schreiner Walker.
Get out of here. Let's go sell some houses, guys. Barbecue.
Barbecue. is
Next Wednesday, parking lot. We have, guys, those bring kids, bring grandkids. We're gonna have a fire truck here. They're gonna have a hose spraying water over the place. We have water slides here, hamburgers, hot dogs, grilling out, beer, seltzers, pop. Nobody's listening. Next Wednesday. Well, this is going longer than I thought. Huh?
Wheelbarrow, barbecue, it's okay, we just have to keep hammering people.
Hey, how you doing, Jay?
Yes.
No, because I mean, he's here, but we're not. House. Yeah, that was when we were talking about. But barely just going, you're going right next to Belgium. So I still need to wrangle up a good painter, an interior painter.
Bob had like a new picture, now it's based off that was like. Right.